It is almost Magnolia Bowl time. We're talking LSU and Ole Miss. The number 4 and 13th ranked team in the country will meet as AP ranked teams for the third consecutive season. They split the previous two games, which were both decided by 6 points or less. Last year went to OT with LSU getting the best of Ole Miss 29-26. A lot on the line for this one as we get set for the weekend and taking a look at just, it can be a high-scoring affair like in 2023. 55 points for Ole Miss they put up to get that dub as they played at home. We'll be back in Oxford this weekend for what should be a key showdown in SEC land. Pleased now to welcome in Glenn West, who covers LSU for 24/7 Sports, and Chase Parham, who covers Ole Miss also for 24/7. And this is just a battle of Lane Kiffin's offense up against a Blake Baker coach defense, which has been pretty good lately on the LSU side. Who comes out on top in this matchup, Glenn?
Yeah, this is one of the great offensive minds and one of the great defensive minds in the game right now. And from LSU's perspective and Blake Baker, I think they're going to try to match what Ole Miss has been able to do with their aggressive style on the offensive side. They've brought a lot of pressure here these first couple weeks. They've gone out into the transfer portal and brought in impact pass rushers, guys like Patrick Payton, Jack Pyburn, Jamari Butler, who you'll see this weekend against the Rebels. And then in the back end of the defense, they've been really solid coverage-wise. Monsieur Delane is probably one of the most improved cornerbacks in the country from just a pure coverage standpoint. Freshman DJ Pickett has done a really nice job in coming in and playing a big role as well. And then Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks in the middle of that defense there, kind of the anchors of that defense, the positions that Blake Baker has coached the last couple of years at LSU. And so there's just a lot of trust, a lot of buy-in with this LSU defense that they have what it takes to go in to Oxford and try to slow down what's been one of the best offenses in the country to this point.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Lane Kiffin on Monday, he was trying to put all the pressure back on Brian Kelly, talking about the financial investment in the transfer portal. And it's clearly tongue-in-cheek because Ole Miss is one of the top portal programs in the country. They spend a ton of money in the transfer portal. But he was really raving about that defensive secondary, as you just mentioned. But the thing for Ole Miss on offense with this and fighting that LSU secondary is they got to run the football. They've got to get Kejuan Lacey, the Missouri transfer, who's been really good. They got to get him active, and it's an offensive line that coming into the season didn't have a lot of continuity. They're getting a little better as they simply play together. You know, the big thing with offensive linemen is simply getting the same five out there. There's a dance, there's a rhythm to it a little bit. And for Ole Miss, we'll get to the quarterback stuff in a minute, but they've got to run the football, they've got to protect. They've got to get the run game going a little bit to have some balance in this game, because it's a big step up from a defense standpoint. Ole Miss at 4-0, they waxed Tulane, they've got 2 SEC wins, but what they're seeing from a straight talent level, from an ability level from LSU is far different than what they saw defensively from Arkansas or Kentucky to this point. So it's all about the run game actually for me with the Ole Miss offense.
Chase, I want to get to the throwing game though, and you mentioned the QB situation, and that's exactly where I want to look right now, because Trinidad Chambliss, who started the past 2 games, and Austin Simmons has been out with that lower body injury, and Trinidad has played very well. So now, still not fully knowing the health and the status of Austin Simmons, what does Ole Miss do, and who do you think gives them the best chance to win if both are fully healthy?
Well, they're not both fully healthy. I fully, at this juncture, expect Trinidad Chambliss to be the starting quarterback for the 3rd week in a row. You know, Lane gave himself an out on Monday. He said Austin is the starting quarterback if he's 100%, but Austin's not going to be 100%. I talked to some sources yesterday that said that he's still hobbled. That was the word that they used, was hobbled. He's been limited all 3 of these weeks, but this week especially from a practice standpoint, and I think it's going to be Trinidad Chambliss' show. And he's a fascinating story, a guy that comes from Ferris State, a D2 transfer to Ole Miss, and in the preseason he talked about, it's just football and even D2 to the SEC, and we kind of all rolled our eyes a little bit and went, okay, yeah, speed of game, all these things, it's not the same whatsoever. But he's been magnificent. You know, he doesn't throw the deep ball great, but he's thrown in windows well. He really fought and hits a lot of intermediate passes last week. He knows his game. He knows what he does well. And he gives Ole Miss a run game that kind of gives them a +1, because he's a really good runner. He ran for 112 yards last week. against Tulane. He's averaging 350, 360 per game through the air, and he hasn't turned the ball over. Again, huge step up in class with LSU, but he's making great decisions, and that's what has sort of invigorated a bit of a, not controversy, but a discussion in this fan base between the quarterbacks, because even when Austin Simmons was healthy, he had 2 turnovers against Georgia State. He had 2 turnovers against Kentucky, and Ole Miss is not going to reach their ceiling with a ton of turnovers from the quarterback position. At this point, Trinidad made good decisions. He's shown that he's played a lot of football. This is Austin's first year to be a starter. He's only started 2 games in his career, and while it's at the D2 level, Trinidad has played a ton of snaps, and he's been really a revelation for Ole Miss. You wouldn't expect the backup to have this amount of success this quickly, but Lane Kiffin, a couple years ago, he brought in Spencer Sanders from Oklahoma State. He's not bashful about improving that quarterback room if he can do that, and he's done that especially with Trinidad Chambliss. It's been an insurance policy that, if we're just being frank, has potentially saved the season for the Rebels, even though we're going into week 5.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I think LSU all week has been preparing for 2 quarterbacks, and it sounds like, from what you're hearing, Chase, it's going to be Chambliss that gets the start here for another week. And this is an offense that LSU really hasn't faced a whole lot of yet this year. They've kind of faced underwhelming offenses against Clemson and Florida, and really kind of dominated in those performances. This is going to be a very tricky situation because Chambliss is obviously a guy who's shown that he can throw the ball a little bit, but his legs are an added element that I don't think LSU's defense has quite seen yet to this point in the season. So this is going to be a really great test for them in terms of just making sure that this defense is what we believe it to be, which is one of the top 4 or 5 defenses in the SEC and one of the best in the country.
So we go from the defense of LSU to now over on their offense. And Glenn, we know that the run game for the Tigers almost is non-existent, ranking 15th out of the 16 SEC teams in rush yards per game with 116.8 this season. So when you look at in totality and you figure, okay, Garrett Nussmeier's running the ship there on offense, how badly does he need the run game to help as the competition steps up some level?
Yeah, he really needs it this week. And to your point, he's been a little bit banged up these last couple weeks, certainly to start the season. He seems to be getting healthier, but they need to find some complementary offense here against an Ole Miss team that's really struggled against the run. I think they've allowed 195 yards on the ground per game, but LSU has not been a great running team to this point either. They've been very inefficient. They haven't been able to get second-year running back Caden Durham going as much as they would have probably liked to here in the first month of the season. He's battling a little bit of an ankle injury, so I do think what you'll probably see this weekend is maybe a little bit of a running back by committee. Second-year running back Juwan Johnson has been a guy that has really had an uptick in his touches. They've been able to get him involved in the passing game. They've gotten him in the perimeter a little bit more, and they really have to be more explosive as a run team to really help complement Garrett Nussmeier in this passing game. Nuss is getting healthier. He's getting there from a throwing perspective, but being able to complement him with guys like Durham and certainly Juwan Johnson is going to be really interesting and really a big key to this game. Which of those two things bend or break is going to be kind of the Ole Miss defense. Are they finally able to get a stop and be able to slow down a run game, or is LSU going to finally be able to get off the ground and kind of complement this offense in the best way possible? So that's going to be a major key to this game from an LSU perspective.
There's a ton of pressure on that Ole Miss defensive front and really the entire front 7 for the Rebels, because they just haven't gotten the quarterback on the ground so far this season. Ole Miss a year ago, and it's a far different roster, it's a far different defense. Ole Miss lost 10 of their top 12 snap count guys from a year ago, so it's a rebuilt defense, but they only have 4 sacks through 4 weeks at this point. Ole Miss a year ago led the nation in sacks and tackles for loss. They had 56 on the year, so they're just not getting the quarterback on the ground. They're having some form issues on finishing. They're getting close. They brought in guys, including Deshaun Womack from LSU, who, you look through the analytics and they could get hurries. They could get hits on the quarterback. But in their careers, they hadn't had a lot of sacks. And that's still been the thing for Ole Miss here. They're just not finishing a lot of negative plays. They're not keeping guys behind schedule to the level they probably need to. And I think that's a huge key against Garrett Nussmeier, is not just keeping him one-dimensional with the run game, but also putting some negative plays together to force those second longs, third and longs, and try to get the ball back. He made so many plays moving inside the pocket a year ago, including one that I think haunts Lane Kiffin more than any other play the entire season. Nussmeier moved away of a potential sack from Satarian Perkins, Ole Miss's best defender, threw the ball down the field, converted a first down, and led to the drive that forced overtime. For Ole Miss, this is all going to be about how much can you keep them off schedule, and can you actually pile up some tackles for loss, some sacks, and put some negative plays together on the Tigers.
Saturday, 3:30, a whole lot of eyes will be on this one, which leads me to asking this. And Glenn, I'll go with you first. True or false here? The winner of this game is now in the driver's seat to eventually make an appearance in that college football playoff.
I think that's a very true statement. These are two very, highly talented teams. They got, a lot of transfer portal players in from both sides to kind of help beef up their veteran presence. I think from an LSU perspective, they finally got that, week one, opener monkey off their back, and they've really hit the ground running here with the defense. And if the offense can just be a little bit more efficient and catch up, a win like this over a team like Ole Miss would be a huge feather in the cap for this team as they move forward into their SEC schedule. So I absolutely believe that if LSU wins this game, they have a path to the college football playoff that looks a lot clearer at the end of when you wake up on Sunday.
100% true for Ole Miss, because you're looking to get to 10-2 to get a CFP berth there inside the SEC. They've got Georgia left in Athens. That's the tall task that we're all aware of. But outside of that, Florida, South Carolina, both at home, don't look like the games in the preseason as to now. A little easier there. And with John Mateer out at Oklahoma, maybe through when the Rebels head to Norman in 4 weeks, that schedule does open up. I think this is the critical game that allows Ole Miss to potentially not just have a doable path, but a likely path to that college football playoff, assuming they don't stub their toe in a game that they are favored in at this point.
Yeah, the home team has won 5 straight and 11 of the last 13 in this series. So good news for Ole Miss if you think the trends will continue. Glenn West, Chase Parham, thank you so much. We get excited for another key SEC showdown, and another key spot to find all your college football info is over on the CBS Sports College Football YouTube page. Make sure you check that out to really get all the type of inside scoop that will get you from Sunday right back to a Saturday to catch all the games in action.